Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 328. 328. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, September the 2nd, from the James Strong Studio in western St. Charles County. The weather is broken here in East Central Missouri. It's beautiful out here, and this Memorial Day weekend, I guess it's summer doesn't end until what, September 20th, 21st, something like that officially. But this is kind of the end of summer, okay? This is the last hurrah. This is the last, a lot of stuff as far as summer goes. And you can almost feel fall coming about. I mean, here it's going to be close to 90 degrees today. In fact, close to 90 degrees, maybe a tad over for every day this weekend. But the lows, I mean, right now it's 7:30 a.m. in East Central Missouri, and it's 57 degrees. Okay, so there's the difference. The sun's lower in the sky. It doesn't stay out quite as long. So while the days will still get warm, the nights are cool. In fact, you can feel that autumn crispness in the air. Thursday morning, I got up at dark 30 and went to the gym with the top down in my car. It was beautiful, but I had to wear a jacket because it was 55 degrees. And a convertible, driving before the sun comes up, 55 degrees. It's beautiful, but you get a bit chilly, and I did turn on the heater. But it's just that time of year. It's a beautiful time of year. I hope you're enjoying yourself wherever you are. Topic of today's essay. We are truly, friends, in the age of extremism. There's a couple things I'm going to touch on today's podcast. Some of them I've touched on before, and in my pompous way, I'll be saying, see, I told you so, because I predicted A was going to happen, and sure enough, it did. I've always been a fan of compromise, and I've been criticized for it. And what I mean by that is, if you're all the way to one side on anything, you're probably not going to be right. Way back in school, they used to say, never use terms like always and never, because terms like always and never, quite honestly, are usually false, because few things are always one way. Few people are never that way. Somebody somewhere most everybody is somewhere in the middle. Let me rephrase that. Once upon a time, most everybody was somewhere in the middle. And I still think they are, but it's not 60-40 anymore. It's not 70-30. It's not even 80-20. Which 80-20 is a business rule that we'll go into some other time. But so many people now are 90-10, 95-5, 99-1. And they consider that compromise. We're going to talk today about the age of extremism and how different businesses, politicians, even rock and roll stars tend to go one way or another. It's bizarre. It's odd. And I'm not going to make the statement that everybody else makes as, well, it never used to be this way. Well, I don't know that because we're in the age of the internet. We've never been in the age of the internet before. I mean, this is something that's maybe 20, 30 years old max. Okay. So 40 years old, you listen to the evening, or 40 years ago, I should say, you listened to the evening news, or you read it in a newspaper, and it was not current. Today, you can read it online as it happens. Case in point, fired up the computer today and saw that Jimmy Buffett had died, 76 years old. If you liked him or not, it doesn't matter. One thing you can't deny about Jimmy Buffett is that he certainly made his mark in the music world. He certainly made his mark in the business world. I'm not going to say he was a one-hit wonder, because he wasn't. He had a lot of hits, but his music was kind of one-trick pony, okay? Kind of the laid-back, slacker, loser, drunkard, et cetera. But he wasn't that at all. That was kind of the genre, the East Coast, Key West, country, pop, rock, folk combination of all of them. And he was very popular in what he did. He was also a fantastic businessman. His Margaritaville restaurants, products, just the brand made him a billionaire. I didn't misspeak there. Billionaire with a B, kind of like Paul McCartney is. The guy who wrote the Beatles songs, okay, doesn't have any more money than Jimmy Buffett did, which just goes to show you he was a billionaire, but he still died at 76 years old, which once upon a time I would have thought he had a good life. Now I'm thinking, wow, only 76. But it doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter what you accomplish. What's the old saying? Close to 100% of all humans end up dying of mortality. In other words, everybody's going to kick it. Everybody's going to die. Jimmy Buffett, R.I.P. In the morning, have I mentioned this before? I don't know. But there's a radio show on that I listen to. If I'm up, it's on a Monday through Friday. It's on at 4 a.m. On Saturday, it's on at 5 a.m. They don't have it on Sunday, but it's part of the Wall Street Journal family of shows. It's called America's First News. On Saturday, it's called America's Weekend, First Weekend maybe, and it's just news stories, not just from the Wall Street Journal, but throughout. It's interesting, but this is a slick, well-produced show that has an occasional guest on. And they'll have a journalist from the Wall Street Journal or USA Today or the New York Times or some publication. And the journalists, I guess, know what they're talking about. Now, why do I make that statement? Because the audio is so bad that quite often you can't understand what they're saying. Now, in this age of high tech, where you can, okay, let me give you an example. You're listening to the sound of my voice right now. I am sitting in my homemade studio with a little bit of soundproofing up in a box that I bought off the internet for $500, $400, I think. Microphones I got from a guy in Belleville, Illinois. Heil Sound, Bob Heil. And I used my computer, which I had a guy I bought used, and a guy kind of programmed it for me. So what I'm getting at is I'm not a high-tech guy. I'm not a high roller. I'm not a tech wizard. But if you're listening to the sound of my voice, it sounds pretty good. And I'm not saying that because I'm a pompous ass saying, well, listen to the pipes on me. I'm just saying that with a little bit of effort, the audio can be really good in this day and age. And it sounds like they've taken their iPhone 4, put it all the way across the room, hit the speaker button, and they're talking. The interview is almost not audible. I can't understand what they're saying sometimes. It's so bad. You would think that if they're using iPhones or they're using Skype, or something, the guy doing the interview would say, you know what? Turn off the speaker on your phone and talk right into it. Or at least use your headset. Or you might say, well, if you're going to use the Skype, don't use the mic that comes with the computer. Go ahead and spend $40 and get a real mic so you can talk. Now, you may think to yourself, well, strong, some people just can't do that. Friends, I've done podcasts from my hotel room with my iPhone using the microphone that came with the phone, okay? What I do, and the audio sounds almost as good as the audio here. Not quite. I've had people say it sounds just as good, but I can tell there is a bit of a difference. But what I do is I sit at a desk and I take a pillow. And I put a pillow in the middle of the desk. And then I put the phone itself and put the phone right in the middle. And sometimes I talk into the phone, sometimes I talk into the headset. It really doesn't matter. It just depends on what I want to do. But the pillow kind of sucks up the bounce, okay? So in a hotel at a Hampton Inn with the iPhone given to me by my boss to do my day job, I'm able to have good audio. Why can't these people do that? I scratch my head and wonder. Let's get into today's essay, The Age of Extremism. Everything seems to be extreme nowadays. Business, culture, human beings, politics especially. And I don't understand why people are the way they are. In business, the consumer is king. The consumer is your boss. Your customer is in charge. That used to be a mantra that you just went off on, and that's how business was ran. Not anymore. Case in point, Major League Baseball. Now, let's forget about our St. Louis Cardinals, who are having a horrible year. They're just a bad team this year. They're in last place. In fact, they are, in most every statistic, they're just either last or near last. They're having a bad season. And what's typical for teams to do, if they're having a bad season, typically on the 31st of July, the trading deadline hits. So a lot of teams think, look, if we're not going to win this year, we'll take the players who are free agents, in other words, they're not going to be with us next year, and trade them to teams that are in the race and get something for them. It's either the season's over for me, let's either trade these guys now and get something for them, or let them walk at the end of the year and get nothing for them. So the Cardinals dumped a bunch of their players. I get that, okay? They got something back for them. Did they get anything back for them? I don't think they did, but time will tell. Who knows? One or two or three of these guys may end up being something, but they got something for them. The trading deadline is over. In other words, you can't make a trade in Major League Baseball. But what the Yankees, Angels, and Mets did is they just gave their players away. A lot of these players were very good players. They were still performing well for their team. And when I say they gave them away, they got absolutely zero compensation for them. So we say, well, why'd they give them away? Money. You take a guy like Harrison Bader, who played for the Cardinals. He was traded to the Yankees. The Yankees just dumped him because he makes $7 million a year. So they saved a few $1 million because the Cincinnati Reds picked him up. Cincinnati Reds are still in the race. They picked him up for nothing. They just picked him up off the scrap heap. The Reds got a pretty good ball player for nothing. Now, granted, they're just going to be able to use him for, a month, which is no big deal, but it could be enough to help them out in the pennant race. So you think to yourself, and the Yankees did the same thing, the Angels did the same thing, the Mets did the same thing. So you think to yourself, well, Strong, how is this any different than what the Cardinals did at the end of July? Because the Yankees, Mets, and Angels got absolutely nothing for these players except for money. Well, baseball's a business, so what difference does it make if they just got money? Baseball is a business. And who drives the business? Where do they get their income from? The fan. So basically, people who pay a lot of money for tickets to see the Yankees or the Angels or the Mets in the middle of September are basically watching a AAA ball team. But they paid for a major league ticket. These owners, just to save a buck or two, not caring at all about their fan base, just dumped it. In other words, F you fans, I'm going to save me some money. I'm going to have more in my pocket, and I really don't care about what you think or what you're going to see. That, friends, is extremism because they don't care about their customer. They just don't care. Case number 2. Cable TV. Now, this has been a big deal for a long time, and I did a show on this not long ago, several months ago, and I said, look, cable TV is on its way out because there's a handful of stations that people watch. Most stations people don't watch, and basically ESPN, the sports stations, carry cable TV. Well, their rates have become so high that cable TV can't make money. And I said, cable TV is going to break and just not be around. Well, who has justified my statement? Charter Communications, a cable TV company. In fact, they had a story yesterday. It said that Charter Communications has a message for media companies. The traditional cable TV model is broken and needs to be fixed or abandoned. That's not Strong saying this. This is Charter Communications saying this. Cable TV is too expensive for consumers and providers. Charter Communications, which has 15 million paid TV subscribers, said in an 11-page presentation to investors yesterday, Friday. It added that cord cutters and rising fees are contributing to a vicious video cycle. Now, the presentation comes amid negotiations between Charter and the Walt Disney Company. Walt Disney Company owns ESPN and FX, among others. The channels will not be available to Charter subscribers until both sides agree on how much Charter will pay Disney to carry the channels. Translation, if you are a customer of Charter Communications and you're paying full board to watch ESPN and FX, you're not going to be able to see them. Oh, but by the way, your cable bill hasn't gone down. Now, Charter's presentation goes a bit further. They actually admitted, quote, customers are leaving the traditional video ecosystem and losses have accelerated. Charter's admitting this. In a statement earlier this week, Disney said that it had been in negotiations with Charter Communications and many of its channels had gone dark for Charter subscribers as a result of the impasse. Disney says, we're committed to reaching a mutual agreed upon solution with Charter, and we urge them to work with us to minimize the disruption to their customers. Well, obviously they're not, because they're not dropping their price. At issue are the rates that Charter will pay Disney for programming and how these movies and shows will be distributed to Charter's customer. Charter has said it does not want to pay a premium for channels its customers do not watch, adding that the rate increases are pushing consumers to cut the cable cord. ESPN is a big deal. I don't watch ESPN. I don't watch FX. I will tell you now, for quite some time, we just haven't gotten around to it. We're in the process of cutting the cord because of the 150 cable channels we have. We regularly watch 2, all right? My wife watches the Bally Sports to see her Cardinals, and I watch Turner Classic Movies. I can count on one hand the number of times I watch other channels at home. We're either moving forward on a new collaborative video model or we're moving on, said Christopher Winfrey. He's the chief executive of Charter. Viewers abandon cable television for streaming services like Netflix. Companies like Charter and Comcast have increasingly focused on providing other services like internet and wireless services. They're weaning themselves off of the pay television business. This, friends, is a big deal. Because if there's no cable, how are we going to watch these services? Well, I told you before, they're going to stream themselves. And it's going to end up costing you at least as much today as it did before, or tomorrow as it does today, to watch a whole lot less channels. Okay. Can you hear that roar in the background? We'll find out how good my microphones are and how well insulated my house are, because we have a huge elm tree that's actually in the neighbor's yard that they're in the process of cutting down. So if you hear that rumble in the background, that's what that is. Please pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Continuing on this whole deal with extremists, preppers, green people, those are some of the most extreme people I've ever seen. And while I love spending a week in Death Valley in the middle of nowhere, off the grid, I mean, to me, it's wonderful. I have no intentions of ever wanting to live out there. Well, there's a family that did. Rebecca Vance, she was 42. Christine Vance, her sister, 41. And Rebecca Vance's 14-year-old boy decided they're going to just live in the Colorado wilderness, off the grid on our own. They're all dead. In fact, the family has been missing since October 2022, and they were discovered in July when a hiker found the boys' remains outside of a tent in a remote campsite in the area of Gold Creek Campground. That's just east of Gunnison in the Rockies. The next day, the investigators discovered the remains of Rebecca Vance and Christine Vance, her sister, inside the tent. Evidence at the campsite suggested the family was trying to live off the grid. Now, investigators found empty food containers at the campsite, but almost no actual food was present in the tent or in the facility. They found survivalist guides scattered all about the site. The boy was 40 pounds when he died. 40 pounds, a 14-year-old boy. The campsite was located 9,500 feet in elevation and it was a harsh winter last winter, the reporters said, with several feet of snow and several days of below zero temperatures. Officials had also said there was a lean-to, kind of like a crude shelter near the campsite, indicating they had tried to escape the elements. All the members were very thin, wearing several layers of clothes when they were found. Rebecca Vance, Christine Vance, and Rebecca's 14-year-old son disconnected from the modern world in July 2022 and headed into the Colorado Rockies, according to Vance's stepsister. The stepsister said that Rebecca had become fearful of the state of the world during the pandemic and concluded that she needed to live off the grid to protect her teenage son. Christine Vance, her sister, decided to join them, thinking they had a better chance of surviving as a duo, as a trio. They were wrong. That, friends, is extremism. Do we live in an ugly world? Yes. Did the government go overboard with restrictions on the pandemic? Yes. Are there threats to freedom, even in this country? Yes. But there's also ways to combat that. There's also ways to counter it. And taking your family at 9,500 feet in the Colorado Rockies to live without a shelter, that's stupid. Now, if I wanted to be kind, I would say you have to pray for these people and understand that they're not right in the head. If I wanted to be ignorant, I would say, you know what? The gene pool may have been strengthened. You can decide door number 1, door number 2, or something in between. Number 6. Do we talk about number 6 yet? Yeah, let's do. Politics. And the world of politics always changes. It changes a lot. It's always changed a lot, okay? And actually, one of the deals with politics changing is where I lost my place here. Here we go. One of the things with politics changing is once upon a time, up until the 1970s, the South was strictly Democratic. And that's because Lincoln was Republican, so they were Democrats. George Wallace was a Democrat. The Jim Crow laws were founded by Democrats. Democrats were not the party of civil rights. Now, things changed and things turned. The South is basically not all Republican, but mostly Republican. The state of Georgia is certainly mostly Republican. Governor Brian Kemp is the Republican governor of Georgia. Pretty popular. And in the 2020 election, the state of Georgia went to Joe Biden. And, of course, President Trump and his cronies cried foul. The election was stolen. And he demanded that Mike Pence do this and Brian Kemp do that to go ahead and turn the election over, and neither of them wanted to. And former President Trump is facing a lot of charges because of this. He had the January 6th uprising because of this. But what's very interesting is there's a district attorney named Fani Willis, Democrat, and she's the lawyer who's taking care of the trial in Georgia. And during what was called a remarkable press conference by local reporters, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp slapped down any suggestion about holding a special legislative session to oust District Attorney Fani Willis. Now, why would he do that? Well, that's what right-wing State Senator Colton Moore said, okay? Now, Moore appeared on Steve Bannon's War Room podcast where he claimed civil war was inevitable unless Willis was stopped from prosecuting former President Donald Trump on fake elector scheme charges. So here we go again on extremism. Why? The election was stolen by they just stole it from Donald Trump in Georgia. Okay, the investigation was done by Republicans in Georgia, and they found, there was some shenanigans going on, but there always is, but not enough to change the election. The Republicans in Georgia said this. And then you got a guy like State Senator Colton Moore saying, why, there's going to be civil war if this goes on. Brian Kemp, who is a voice of reason here, said, let me be clear. We have a law in the state of Georgia that clearly outlines the legal steps that can be taken if constituents believe their local prosecutors are violating their oath by engaging in unethical or illegal behavior. And they're talking about Prosecutor Fani Willis. Up to this point, I've not seen any evidence that District Attorney Willis' actions or lack thereof warrant action by the Prosecuting Attorney Oversight Commission. Kemp concluded, and this is important, the bottom line is that in the state of Georgia, as long as I'm governor, we're going to follow the law of the Constitution regardless of who it helps or harms politically. And in Georgia, we will not be engaging in political theater that only inflames the emotions of the moment. That, my friends, is the voice of reason. Now, Colton Moore, he warned that if Trump was prosecuted, our constituencies are going to fight in the streets. Do you want civil war? He asked. I don't want a civil war. I don't want to have to draw my rifle. I want to make this problem go away with my legislative means of doing so. In other words, you don't like the prosecutor, so just throw her out. Colton Moore is a Georgia state senator calling for a revolution. Now, I understand by taking this stance, I'm going to alienate some people who listen to my podcast. I only ask that you hear me out and consider what I'm saying. You have a Georgia state senator calling for a revolution because his guy lost. If you go to Colton Moore's website, it says God, guns, liberty, and leadership, flying the American flag. I think I've made this statement before. If I haven't, I'm going to make it now. Unfortunately, you have knotheads like Colton Moore. They're in the Missouri House and Senate too. My state senator is one of them. If you pound your chest and tell everybody what a patriot you are, there's a real good chance that you're not a patriot at all. You're a self-serving cad. You're a charlatan. You're not representing the people of your district. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the people that elected you. I'm not saying the guys who like you. If you're a state senator, a U.S. senator, a state congressman, a committee man, anybody, you represent everybody, even those that didn't vote for you, okay? In my opinion, Colton Moore should be tried for treason. Calling for revolution because the district attorney who he doesn't like is kept on the job? Your Republican governor says the Democratic DA can stay in office, and you're still calling for revolution. I'd hate to see me have to pick up my rifle and do something. I want to make an ignorant statement here. I've seen Colton Moore's picture. Friends, I don't think he could pick up a rifle that weighed more than 10 pounds, okay? And a lot of these guys are like that. Patriot my ass. Extremism, once again, rears its ugly head. The last example of extremism and what a bizarre, insane world we live in. Go back to the 1970s. Rock and roll music in the 1970s, okay? That's when I grew up. That's when I was a kid. That's when, I'm not going to say I rebelled, because I really didn't. I guess all kids do, but my rebellion, my going to the other side was very mild as far as today goes. But one of the most extreme, wild, bizarre, shock rock and rollers was Alice Cooper. And what did Alice Cooper do? First of all, he made great music. I loved Alice Cooper. I saw him in concert at the I don't know what they called it. I think they called it the Checker Dome back then. I don't know if it was the Arena or the Checker Dome. They went back and forth, but it's gone now. Good venue. Loved it. Fantastic concert. All the good songs, all the theatrics. But the thing about Alice Cooper that was really different, first of all, his name, Alice Cooper. He's a man named Alice. And he wore makeup with long hair. So Alice Cooper was one of the first gender benders, okay? And a whole lot of others have followed after that, okay? And it was Bret Michaels is that way. The guy from Twisted Sister is that way. There's a lot of the gender benders. That was a big deal, okay? Alice Cooper was the pioneer of gender bending. In fact, he even made a statement one time in the 1970s that I still remember this, and I thought it was funny, and I'd repeat it, and it was shocking at the day. And I think he said it just to get a rise out of people, because Alice Cooper, if nothing else, is a good businessman, not unlike Jimmy Buffett, and who has just gone over the top with theatrics. Alice Cooper said in the 1970s, you know what? The way things are going, one of these days, eventually, everybody's going to be bisexual. And the world lost their mind. Now, is that statement true? No. Did it get press? Yes. So, what happens? Alice Cooper, the original gender bender, who's pushing 80 now, he had a deal with a cosmetics company, okay? However, he had a deal. He doesn't have it anymore. Here's the story. And this is the most bizarre thing. I'm going to read this story, talk about what the original gender bender shock rock guy, Alice Cooper, says something that is really uneventful and yawningly true, and the price he's paying for it financially. Rock singer Alice Cooper has lost his deal with a LGBTQ-owned cosmetics company after he called cases of transgender people a fad. Cooper's statements were published last week with an interview with Stereo Gum, in which the singer was asked his opinion on gender-affirming care. Quote, Cooper said, "I'm understanding that there are cases of transgender, but I'm afraid that it's also a fad, and I'm afraid there's a lot of people claiming to be this just because they want to be that," Cooper said. "I find it wrong when you've got a 6-year-old kid who has no idea. He just wants to play, and you're confusing him by saying, yeah, you're a boy, but you can be a girl if you want to be." Cooper argued people should at least become sexually aware before they start considering their gender, and claimed genitals are the logical way to determine gender. Continue the quote. "If you have these genitals, you're a boy. If you have those genitals, you're a girl," Cooper told the music blog. There's a difference between I'm a male who's a female, or I'm a female that's a male and wanting to be female. You were born a male, okay? So it's a fact. You have these things here. Now the difference is you want to be female. Okay, that's something you can do later on if you want. But you're not a male born a female. The LGBTQ-owned Vampire Cosmetics lost their mind. A day after the comments were published, Vampire Cosmetics announced it was ending its makeup collaboration with the singer less than 2 weeks after the deal was launched. Now, according to the website, Vampire Cosmetics is a woman-owned, disabled-owned, and LGBTQ-owned cosmetics brand that sells vegan, cruelty-free, and talc-free products. Well, they checked every box there, now didn't they? Pre-sale for Cooper's collaboration with the company, entitled The Alice Cooper Makeup Collection, was launched on August 14th, 10 days before Vampire Cosmetics terminated the deal. Now, in the company's initial announcements, Vampire Cosmetics said the collaboration was inspired by Cooper's distinctive look and style. The collection included guitar and amp-shaped makeup palettes, microphone-shaped lipsticks, and Cooper's Whiplash mascara, which the company described as a unisex product originally created to liberate the eyes. Now, does Vampire Cosmetics have a right to do that? Well, we'll see what the courts have to say. Okay. But if you're a LGBTQ-owned cosmetics company, and you're woman-owned, and you're disabled-owned, and you're vegan, cruelty-free, and even talc-free, mind you. There's no talc in our products. You've checked every box. Now, here's my question. What Cooper said was absolutely true. He didn't say anything bad about trans people. In fact, he said, yeah, I recognize there's trans people out there. He didn't say you can become trans if you want to. All he's saying is, you know what, maybe you ought to be sexually aware first. If you're 6, you're not. And that's a fact. If you're born with a tallywhacker, you're a man. If you're born with a vagina, you're a girl. Plain and simple. Now, somewhere later on, if you want to change that, that's fine. But they lost their mind because Cooper wouldn't admit that anybody can be anything they want at any time. Friends, if I decided that you all needed to address me as your Royal Highness because I identify as British royalty, the fact of the matter is I'm not British royalty. But if I want to do that and you want to play along, that's fine. But I'm not British royalty. What Cooper said was, I don't think, hurtful. In fact, it was just a fact. He wasn't damning anybody. But by golly, the LGBTQ-owned Vampire Cosmetics lost their mind. Here's my question about Vampire Cosmetics. Okay, they're LGBTQ-owned. Now, are they lesbian or gay or bi or trans or queer? Which are they? They're not all. You can't be all. Well, I guess you can be all if you want to. They're also woman-owned. Well, is it a man that used to be a woman, or is it a woman that's still a woman? Or is it woman-owned today, and tomorrow it's not going to be woman-owned because the person will have changed their mind again? Disability-owned. A disabled person owns this company. Here's a newsflash, friend. If you're running a corporation, you're not disabled. Okay, you're just not. Okay, you're enabled. Everybody's disabled in some ways. Should I claim disability? Because you know what? I really want this disabled person. I don't know what their disability is, and maybe they can't be a hod carrier for a bricklaying company because they have trouble walking. They're hardly disabled because they're doing something else. I really want to be a Major League Baseball player. I want to play shortstops for the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's what I want to do. But because of my disability, I can't. I can't see as well. I can't see very well. I can't run very fast, and I can't track a ball with my aging eyes. So I'm disabled. I can't be a shortstop for the LA Dodgers. Folks, we have become extremed beyond the fray. And when a gender-bending old rocker is canceled by the gender-bending community, that, my friends, is jumping the shark. Well, that's it. I'm done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address, JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. You want to get the podcast delivered to your mailbox each and every time I publish one, send me an email with your link. I'll send it to you upon publication, and you can download it and listen to it at your leisure. Well, that's it. I'm done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.